The Mackie M-Caster Studio was released in 2022. However, is it still a good purchase today? At the time of this recording, the Mackie M-Caster Studio retails for $349.99 US dollars. However, I was able to obtain it through Musician's Friend for $69.99 US dollars. Inside the box, I received the unit, a USB cable, a universal power supply, and a quick start guide. However, on Mackie's own website, it says I should have received the unit, a USB cable, the universal power supply, an 1/8-inch TRRS aux cable, and an 1/8-inch TRRS cable for smartphones. When it comes to the build, the Mackie M-Caster Studio has a plastic but sturdy build with a good deal of heft to it at 1.5 pounds and a footprint that's much, much larger than I anticipated. I was pretty happy to see the color screen and the vibrant meters come to life when I plugged it in. And speaking of colors, the unit has RGB at the bottom of the device and around the feet. The plastic knobs have some give to them, especially the smaller ones. I even found a makeshift mute functionality, but we'll talk about that later. When it comes to the layout of the Mackie M-Caster Studio, on the back, we have an 1/8-inch headset microphone jack, one combo jack, a 48-volt phantom power button, an 1/8-inch instrument input, a USB-C connection for phones and computers, an 1/8-inch cell phone input with built-in mix minus, an 1/8-inch headphone jack, an 1/8-inch monitor out jack, a power jack, and the little bitty hole down there is used for force updates. On the top, we have a navigation knob, which can be turned or pressed, menu and home buttons, a color screen, a sound pad volume knob, 4 sound pads, 2 FX knobs, 2 contour knobs, 3 input selector switches. The first is for mic or headset. The next one is computer or instrument. And the third one is cell phone or Bluetooth. And then 3 volume knobs. When it comes to the feature set of the M-Caster Studio, the device is 24-bit, 48 kilohertz. With the contour FX knobs, you get sound shaping and enhancements. And with the stream FX knobs, you can add fun like voice changing effects. It has Bluetooth connectivity, which allows for both sending and receiving audio with a built-in mix minus. A built-in sampler that allows you to transfer and store audio files directly on the M-Caster Studio, and that's with 3 gigabytes of internal storage. Also, if you downloaded firmware update 1.0.67, you have loopback available to you. And the RGB LED light strip around the bottom has 15 different colors. Let's switch over to the M-Caster on the desk. I've got the stream cam facing down on it, and I'm going to just menu dive just topically. We're not going to go too deep into some of these settings. So in here, you can just click the menu button there. And the first one we see is contour. So if we dive into contour by pushing this dial knob in, we have none, which is what I have it set to now. We have broadcaster, deep caster, bright caster, auto leveler, hard compress, bright. As you see, it just goes on and on. It's pretty extensive. Now under the FX, which is the second one in, we push in, and now we have none. We can have plate verve, live room, bathroom reverb, laser show, flanger. That's a lot of the goofy stuff you hear on streams. Next to that, we have the Bluetooth menu that we can dive into. So I don't have my phone connected to this at this current time, but you can enter pairing mode, and then you can have it connect automatically if you wanted to. The next one is the sampler. So if we get in there, we have where you could record your samples, you can assign them, you can clear the buttons, you can select the mode and the colors of the buttons. It even lets you do that back in 2022. That's awesome. But under the mode here, I have them all set to 1 shot. So if we wanted to go into number 1, you could set it to 1 shot, loop, or re-trigger. All pretty self-explanatory there. Later, I'll talk about something I really like about the sound pads. The functionality of the sound pads is pretty simplistic. It is kind of like how you did it on the Tascam Mixcast 4, etc., some of the earlier devices, but we'll come back around to that because I do have something I want to bring up on that. Under utility options, you have output gain, which you can set the gain for USB output and Bluetooth. You have storage mode, which this is just to let you connect the device to your computer, and that's how you can transfer sound pad files and do the update. You have to have it storage mode activated. USB loopback is really self-explanatory. Firmware update. As you can see, I'm on the latest firmware update. And then this one is factory reset, which we definitely don't want to initiate. But that's what's under utility options. Under lighting, we've got off. RGB is the mode I keep it in, and it just lets you cycle through all the colors as it sits on your desk. It's really cool. You have white, red, orange, yellow, green, light blue, blue, purple, magenta, pink, and back around. So a couple things I tested on this unit. One, loop back, and it functions as you would anticipate. However, the second test I did, I'm going to show you the outcome of that right now. But people are always going to ask, can a unit drive the Shure SM7B? Longtime subscribers know that a dead giveaway on an audio interface that, in fact, can't effectively push the Shure SM7B is me coming in on a condenser microphone that is going to require a lot less gain. So that should be the dead giveaway. But I'm going to switch over to the Shure SM7B so you can hear for yourself. Now I'm on the Shure SM7B and the gain is at 3 o'clock. But in my in-ear monitors, I hear really, really bad noise. We'll step it up to 4 o'clock. So now we're at 4 o'clock and the noise is really, really bad in my in-ear monitors. I think that the static, the hissing and terrible noise comes in after you exceed 2 o'clock on the dial. If I got to 3, it was pretty bad, but it was maybe somewhat usable. But anything past that, it was just horrendous. So I would say, unless you have a mic booster that's going to give you an extra 20 dB of clean gain or more, then it's an absolute no-go. On the pros, number one, I like the solid screen. I say color, but it's green, but that's a color. So I really like how it looks, and it makes it easy to navigate when you are trying to see it in a studio like I have, where it's kind of dark in some spots, but the green just pops right out. Another pro would be the 4 sound pads with the dedicated sound pad volume knob. Really like that, but we're going to come back around to the sound pads. Another pro is in one-shot mode, I can hit a sound pad and I can also stop it by hitting the button again. And it cuts it right off. I absolutely love that. Another thing with the sound pads, you can fire off multiple ones at once. So you can hit 2 buttons at the same time, 3 buttons, all 4 buttons, and they'll just fire off, which I think is fun. Another pro, I love the physical menu and home buttons and the rotary dial here that allows you to dial in things, and you can push it in as a button as well for selection. That setup right there is really, really good. Another pro was it was really easy to update the firmware with one catch. I made a mistake. I'll talk about it in just a second. Another pro is they boast that the power supply is universal. No matter where you're at, you can just plug it in. It's just going to work. Another pro is the addition of loopback in version 1.0.67. A lot of people who are streamers require the ability to have loopback, so they thought about you and made it happen. Another pro is I made a makeshift mute button. Let's switch over to the device. So down here where you have the microphone and you can switch to the headset microphone, if I just flip this switch, kind of a makeshift workaround, but still functions the way I would want a mute switch to function. Seems to be silent, but I'll only know when I play back the recording for sure. Another pro is the headphone out is extremely loud. I have talked about for years on this channel, I like to take my Bayer Dynamic DT770 Pros and I will twist them and I'll just lay them on the desk and I'll let the sound from the computer come out if it's just something like a YouTube video or something along those lines that's not critical for me to be listening to. And this thing kicks it out. They're like monitors. Yes, I have monitors in the studio, but I just have so much stuff. It's hard to get to them sometimes and such. And so I just do that. And this is one of the few audio interfaces that clearly pushes those headphones. I have to be careful not to put them on with the volume set up too loud because it will end my hearing. And then lastly, the last pro is RGB guy is going to RGB. So I love the RGB lighting on the unit. This view that I have going here just doesn't do it justice what it actually looks like, but it is a really sharp look. When it comes to cons, I do have plenty of them. First, the missing specifications, and rolling right into the second one would be the main specification that people would want to know before buying an audio interface is how much gain are you able to get this thing to push? You know, clean gain can you push with this thing? There seems to be a theme of missing stuff. So the next con I have would be the missing accessories. Where's my 1/8 inch TRRS cable and my 1/8 inch TRRS cable at? Where are those? I guess we'll never know. Another con is the shipping condition that this came in. It had this slimy film all over it. Something exploded in the bag or something. When I went to Reddit, there were numerous reports of the same situation where they got the box brand new, unopened, and it had this gel-like liquid substance in it, and it was despicable. I had a really hard time trying to get that substance off the device. You can see in some of my early photos of the device that it looks kind of weird because of that. Another con is a device in this format should have onboard recording, and this does not. It just seems like a no-brainer that this should have come with onboard recording, especially at $349.99. Another con that doesn't really affect me much, but other people were very much annoyed by it, and it is the either-or functionality. Either you use this or you use that when you have to flip those buttons. So I could see where it would be frustrating for instrument and computer, but Bluetooth or cell phone or microphone or headphone mic, I think are kind of, forgivable. Another con for me is while you see the meters jumping up and down, there's no markers on them to tell where you're at. Like, what am I hitting? I know because I have an audio recording software going on the other computer, but I was just kind of perplexed why they didn't put any dashes or anything on the unit. And then another con is the wobble in some of the buttons, especially like the smaller buttons. You get a decent amount of wobble on them, and that is not something that you really want to have to deal with. And another con, I don't know if you noticed during this video, but triggering the sound pads is not always a hit. You got to really dig into the button to get them. When I first got it, I was getting it 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 3 presses. Sticking with the sound pads, another con is on the unit, when you put over a sample that doesn't fit their requirements, they'll say, would you like to convert this sound sample? And you click yes, of course. And when you do it, still doesn't work. Not for me anyway. Maybe you've got this unit and you've had better success. But when I do that conversion, it has never worked. In fact, I had a situation where I had numerous sound samples of the same sound, and it was just repetitive of each one, and none of them worked. So I had to get in there, the storage utility, get in there and delete all of them off of there. It was really annoying. You know, you could clear them on here, obviously, but just to get them out of that little storage library, because you get 3 gigs of storage in there, which is cool for the samples, but it's annoying that I couldn't get that conversion to work. In the notes, I'm going to come back around to the file format for the sound samples. But my last con is the support. When I reached out to them because I was doing the firmware update incorrectly, what I had done is instead of just going to their website, I just typed into Google M-Caster Studio firmware update. And so a page came up from their website. I clicked on it and I was greeted by an error. Tried it again, error. You don't have access to this page. And I was like, okay, how am I supposed to update the unit? Is it just so old I can't update it? So I reached out to them. They responded back saying, hey, what URL are you using? So I went all the way through their website to the product page and found the downloads from there, which is what I should have done in the first place. So user error on that one. But when I sent them a response email, it bounced. And I tried to send them another email and it bounced back to me saying couldn't be delivered. So I don't know what's going on with that, but that was obnoxiously annoying. On the notes front, like I said, just go to their product page for firmware and any information you need. Just go directly to that instead of doing a Google search like I did. And when it comes to the sound sample files, make sure they're 24-bit, 48 kilohertz, and you're good to go. You won't have to waste time converting them, etc. So some of my stuff were MP3s. Some of my sound effects are in different bit rates and sample rates. And so if you just have it locked in at that, you're going to be good to go. There are just simply too many options to recommend this. And one other thing, I have all the processing turned off, as you've seen when I had the unit in the settings menu. But every so often I hear like a little click in my in-ear monitors, which makes it sound like a gate is closing. But I can't prove that there's some sort of gating going on in there or whatever. Almost every time I end a sentence, I hear what sounds like a noise gate closing. So I don't know if it's going to translate into the recording or not, but I've noticed that the last few times I've used this unit, and I have all the settings turned off. Those are my thoughts on the Mackie M-Caster Studio. I think it was a cool attempt in 2022, but nowadays I think there's just simply much better options. But what do you say? Chime in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, thank you.